All right, ladies and
Recording in
gentlemen,
progress.
thanks for coming to the Yelm study session. Let's kick us off with, we got Kate, Paul, and Carrie. That's you three in the front row, all right. Who's presenting first? Or are you all
We're
presenting?
all putting together. Yes, I'll take the first couple of slides. Should we all stand up here?
Whatever you feel like, we're very informal on a study session. So whatever you're comfortable with.
I was like, yeah. Okay, so I'll kind of walk us through the first couple of slides and then each one will come up and they speak to them, but I'll start with just introductions. Thank you all so much for having us. Really great to be here in person. I'm Kate Hartring. I'm a community projects manager on PSC's Community Solutions team. And we're here to talk about our pole charging program, which we've been in discussions with the city of Yelm I guess for the whole year at least. So the city of Yelm responded to kind of an interest form that we sent out at the end of last year about this possibility, and we're really, really excited about this partnership. So excited to let you all know more about the program and more about what we're talking about. Do you guys just want to do intros as we come out one by one? Okay, so we can go to the next slide. All right, so just an agenda about the presentation we have here. Paul's going to start with telling you all more about PSC's transportation electrification plan, just all of the related products that we have, just to give you an idea of all of the other programs that we're offering. Then we'll get more into detail about public pole charging, which is specifically the program we're here to talk about. We'll talk about some of the data that we've used to look at the city of Yelm and where we might want to site these chargers. But then we'll talk more about the partnership process and eventually the community engagement that we'd like to execute to get resident feedback on where they want to see the chargers so that we can really make a collaborative decision. So next slide, and we'll pass it to Paul.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Gardner, Product Development Manager on the new products team. So before we get into the slides, appreciate kind of an open forum. So stop me, ask questions, raise hands. Appreciate the conversational approach. Before we get into the programs, just wanted to highlight our transportation electrification plan. We filed in 2018, which is a 5-year roadmap in terms of how we see the utility fit into the transportation electrification sector. And really what we do is we augment what the other third-party market is not addressing. So we do things like multifamily, which is not a focus for the larger network providers, public charging in areas that are not Walmarts, are not Target. So the smaller, more locally based partners in who we choose to partner with. And so we're addressing charging infrastructure gaps and for managing electric loads. And then last but not least is energy equity and inclusion is really important for us in terms of focusing on that niche. We've targeted 30% of our dollars towards that, towards the equity customers and use cases, and we'll get into some of that data on how Yelm fits into that at a later point. Yeah.
Can you give me a definition of what you mean by energy equity and inclusion?
Yes, so we look at a couple different factors, and I might call on you to read out some of our definitions. But in short, there's income component, there's historically underrepresented communities or overburdened communities in terms of how they have historically been represented. So would you add anything on that, Carrie?
Yeah, highly impacted communities are designated by the Department of Health based on cumulative impact analysis by a state code or community located in census tracts that are fully or partially on Indian country, as defined in another. That's 18 USC.
So what I'm curious is what your intent is to further energy equity and inclusion.
Yeah, the main difference with this plan, before this plan started in 2018-19, we were spending less than 5% of our dollars towards those underrepresented use cases and customers. With this, we're committing a larger portion of our dollars, that 30%, on allocating towards getting infrastructure installed in those areas of need and or service providers that provide services to those in need. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I suppose it. I mean, it seems like prior to this, what you were doing was operating as a business, putting putting your product where it needed to be, where people were, supply and demand. And it sounds like maybe that's not what's happening there.
Yeah, the other component of it, we don't operate on a ROI basis per se in terms of putting chargers out like ChargePoint, Electrify America and others. They look at it from a ROI standpoint of utilization because they're going to get paid on the amount of people that charge at their stations. We don't have that same metric. And so we can serve those customers that are not being served elsewhere by the providers.
Do you see a large demand in those areas for electrical charging capacity for vehicles?
Yes, and it will continue to grow. Like as an example, this year, starting in August, the state has a state program for customers that are, I think it's $88,000 or less for a family of four. They're going to start putting on the hood incentives. And that demand for, so those people that typically couldn't buy an electric vehicle because it does cost more, that cost is going to come down because you're going to get, not only have federal incentives, $7,500 back on your taxes every year, but you're going to have on the hood incentives here in Washington State starting here in August. So that demand is going to grow more.
So eventually I can have a Tesla.
So yeah, I mean, the dollars are significant. In some cases, we've done some of the math where if you take advantage, so it's not only for purchasing, but it's also leasing vehicles. In some instances, you can lease an electric vehicle for 3 years and it costs less than $100 a month. And be happy to send you links on that and the publications of press releases on the new program that's upcoming.
So what Tracy was saying, are you talking about putting charging stations on the reservations then, where you wouldn't before?
Yep. So we are proud to partner with the tribes. We actually just went through for the Nisqually tribe. That's the first time I've been past that casino. I was like, oh, great. We just finished a fleet assessment for them. So not only are we putting chargers in for their customers and the community, we actually just went through and did a whole fleet assessment of a 10-year horizon of saying, this is what you need to do based upon your current combustion engines and to electrify over a 10-year period. So we spent X amount of thousands of dollars to help them become comfortable in electrifying their fleet as well. So a lot of different approaches in terms of how.
Normally put a charging station over there because what?
Not necessarily. I think it's just more of a focus for us. And like I said, we're not under that same business model or the other third parties are out there that really look at it from an ROI standpoint and very high utilization. So
Since you're not on ROI, then you would have just done it anyway, right? Like,
potentially,
It seems like a no-brainer. It's a casino and
Yeah.
it's a lot of electrical car market's gonna go up. Then that would just seem like, once again, back to the supply and demand capitalism.
yep. And we have two ownership models. If we go to the next slide.
I was just going to ask, in reference to that whole discussion that we were having about the equity and inclusion, a good example of that would be when down in Vancouver, Portland area, when they were looking at putting the bridge, that I-5 bridge that went across, there was a neighborhood that was low income or disadvantaged neighborhood. They had no problem plowing right through there. But we here don't have that kind of situation necessarily in Yelm, and it's hard to find that in a lot of the communities that we're used to seeing. But it's that historically, like the former red zones that have yet to bring themselves up. It's because nobody puts anything in there to improve them until wealth all of a sudden comes in. But yet these are people who need those access just as much as everybody else. Okay.
Transportation is key, right?
Thank you.
If we go and click through, there should be, I think, 8 total buckets here. And I think this will answer a lot more of these questions, this dialogue that we're having. So wanted to give you a sense of everything that we're focusing on before we get into the pull charging, which we'll have the specific slides on. We have a suite of offerings. So we had our pilots back in 2018-19. Now, as of last year, 2023, we launched our multifamily fleet and workplace charging. So while we're talking to you all about public pull charging, if there's businesses that are interested in electrifying, so let's say apartment complex, or that a given business is interested in potentially converting some of their vehicles, we have other programs that would be happy to speak to you all or speak to those entities about our programs. With these programs, we have 2 ownership models. We have a PSE owned, which is fully turnkey. So we go in, we do all the design, engineering, permitting, all the maintenance, and that's what our public pull charging will be able to talk to you about. But if there is properties that are more sophisticated and they feel comfortable with the technology, we do have a customer-owned model as well. And what we do is we have rebate incentives to help bring down the cost. In some cases, with Empower Mobility customers, that's our equity customers, we've designed our incentives so in the hopes that it's zero out of pocket for those entities to electrify. So yeah, multifamily, fleet, workplace, and then
Multifamily, like apartment complexes, because I see people with Teslas. Where you charging your car, bro? Don't know what's happening, but that makes sense.
yeah, so that's a really good niche for us. For multiple reasons. And then in addition to, if a property is not able to electrify, it's one of the good use cases about this public pole charging program that we're talking about. We can site these chargers directly adjacent to the property. So tenants would still feel comfortable owning electric vehicles because they have close access to public charging. Yeah, so public charging on the bottom left, we just launched that couple months ago. So this is a standard, what we call ground mount installations, similar to ones like you have here in the city here. We'll continue to do that. And we have 2 ownership options for that. But then the new concept, which will be on the next slide, I'll talk to you about, is the pole charging we're excited about. Residential charging. So we want to help customers get chargers installed in their home that we can have the data to. The reason why it's important for us to understand that, there's a lot of infrastructure that's going to be needed to support the additional load that's coming on the grid, but we want to defer as many costs as possible. And so the idea here is if we have data from the charger and we can communicate with the charger, if we have a heat dome, let's say at some point in June, we can ask customers to say, can we turn off your charger? And we could eliminate or prevent outages in areas and so forth. So we incentivize customers, so we'll give them upfront incentive to enroll, and then they also get annual incentives just to be enrolled, and it's a passive participation. So if they don't want the charger to be turned off, they can just opt out.
So you're saying like in a power outage situation,
Yeah.
utilize that source as to repower a community.
Yeah, so it's well, one thing, so
It's a charger, not a battery.
yes, so it's a charger in that it's much like, it's like a thermostat, you know, like in California or Hawaii.
As long as we have Wi-Fi.
How they ask people to turn down their AC or use electricity during certain events, the chargers are the same. And typically we're going to have those in the off-peak periods. Yeah, so that just launched in March. And then last but not least is technology demonstrations. So this ties into your question. So we will be looking at vehicle to X is the concept. So it's vehicle to home, vehicle to building, vehicle to grid. We'll be testing those technologies. We'll be first and foremost is the school districts. This is a low hanging fruit for us because they're electrifying. And if you think about these buses that sit dormant in parking lots for the majority of the day, huge battery banks. So how can we tap into those battery banks, providing grid services back to the grid? And even like you mentioned, in some cases, you can have an island and provide like battery backup to critical infrastructure. It could be a community hub, you know, if you have a long power outage, a storm and so forth. So we're gonna working on the concepts this year. We might get to some deployments by end of year, but definitely next year we'll have those demonstrations. And then last but not least, the other use case that's come up in our research, talking with community groups and entities, is small and medium-sized agricultural businesses. So how can we get them comfortable with electrifying their equipment and get them on the spectrum to decarbonizing as well? So there'll be more that come out of it, but those are the 2 first use cases that we are focusing on there. And then last but not least, the education and outreach, all of our tactics, strategies evolve as all of these programs are getting launched. So that's a lot to swallow. In terms of what we're working, yeah, go for it.
Back to, you said that dome where you can turn the car off. Do you have the option then of technology to reduce power to a house during those times of critical usage where it's like, hey, can you use less power and we'll provide you enough to run your refrigerator? And
No, the way that
that's it.
the vehicle to
On one item.
yes, certain vehicles that have the ability to backfeed. So whether it's going to the grid or the first use case that makes sense for residential is saying, so if there's a power outage situation, your vehicle's plugged in, your vehicle now becomes a a power source to the load at your home. So that's the use case. There's no way to throttle the energy back in current technology.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This might be way out there, but you mentioned California and you're talking about all this addition to the grid with PSE, and then we're talking about taking gas heat out of homes. So just how much more can your grid sustain if everything was electrical in the state of Washington?
Wish I had that answer. Wish. So that's why it's so important for us to look for load flexibility is what we call for it, so that we can defer those costs and eliminate the need to provide infrastructure upgrades. One thing you'll see a lot more is, I don't want to say,
Not defer the cost, but how much power do you have as a company?
I don't know.
If the whole state is loaded with electrical.
What you're going to see is a lot more energy storage. So not only with the vehicles, but you're going to see localized energy storage, like community solar, community energy storage deployments that are throughout our service territory that balances the need for the grid. You're going to see one of our VPs calls it energy orchestration. So where we're taking power from, whether it's on the other side of the mountains where we're getting renewables, a lot of sun, or the localized energy storage that we're deploying throughout our communities, there's going to be a whole system in terms of how we manage that. And that's work that's in planning that's ongoing in the company right now. And there's no answer as of yet.
So you can't say like, if we have 100% capacity, we're at 70% right now, or like, you can't say how much we're weighing on your grid.
It's there's hotspots, right? So there's hotspots. There's areas like that are constrained on the islands and the peninsula where they have limited infrastructure already there. So that's a hotspot. So it's locational based. It's not system wide per se. It's more which circuits and which parts of our system have the highest demand and lowest pipe in.
Has there been an increase in battery storage capacity? How do you, are these just big batteries then, or?
Yeah, I mean, the technology is evolving. You know, the lithium is there, it's in cars, but the one thing that's really intriguing to us as a company, and we will be piloting this, is called a flow battery. You imagine like a large shipping container that's filled with electrolyte, like a type of liquid, and it's a very long duration, long discharge is what we need, because batteries like lithium, you can deplete those in a matter of hours. What we need is long sustained energy storage. And so those are the type of technologies we'll be testing to see how it best fits into the need of our customers and our grid.
Those haven't been deployed yet?
No, we just signed an agreement with the company, blanking on it now, but if you look up flow batteries, we'll be testing. So I would anticipate it'll be deployed late this year or sometime next year. And this is I'm getting into my gray matter because this is not my department, but I know enough to be dangerous.
What kind of weird question about it? What are the fire suppression stuff? If one of those goes up in flames?
In what the lithium batteries?
Well, these cargo containers that you're talking about.
That one,
No.
yeah, that one I can't speak to, but there is standards that have to be met and protections in place. But yeah, that's getting into, I'll get myself in trouble. These are great questions, yeah.
My one concern in reference to the increasing demand on electricity, by carbon-based fueling, is that the wiring and that infrastructure is my one concern, because you go back to older houses, they had smaller gauge wires that all of a sudden they are now drawing more power. They have to increase the gauge wire. Communities have a central box that feeds all the houses. We start drawing for EVs and all these other things. How much is that going to affect our infrastructure? If you can't answer this, this is my one concern. I never hear anybody discussing this, is how's it going to affect that infrastructure? Because if we're already, my house, if it's already maxed out with its nice little fuse box, you can't add more to it. I have to take something away. Same thing with the box for the neighborhood. So that's my one concern is there somebody looking at that problem, or do we just have people who, the good idea fairy is out there saying, hey, we want to do this, and there's people on the tech side going, Hang on here, just a moment. It's not good. You're asking a lot.
So the answer varies. There is technologies out there like a smart panel, which will allow you to use existing wiring and existing constraints, but then you have the ability to turn off certain breakers while other ones are on per se. As an example, one that's common, and this is probably what I'm going to do at my house, is that there's a smart splitter, like specifically for electric vehicle, and you would plug it into your dryer outlet. And what it is it's smart enough to know if your dryer's on, your car can't charge. Or if your car's charging, the dryer can't be on. So there is, and that's like $200. So those are pretty cost effective. So those technologies are out there. The other thing I would say is that for our power mobility customers, as a part of the single family program, we actually do have installation and infrastructure upgrade incentives. So if they qualify from an income standpoint, we'll pay up to $2,000 for them to upgrade their panel. And typically that covers the cost. So we do think about that, especially as from an equity standpoint, the impact there.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, good stuff. You guys are firing away. All right, next one. So this is what we're here to really talk to you about.
You brought a whole side of it.
No, man, it's been a while since I've been out in public and speaking to municipalities in person, so it's good. It's good. So how many of you are familiar with the level 2 chargers that are at the ground? Have you seen them? Do you know what they are? Okay. Basically what we're doing is taking that standard installation that's at the ground level, where you have the charger, all the distribution gear, and then eventually connects into the transformer as the source. We're going to continue to do that, but it's expensive and costly because you're doing a lot of civil and groundwork. So we're taking this equipment and going vertical on utility poles and streetlights. It is the unit that we're actually going to use is on the left-hand side. So Seattle City Light and Portland. So Seattle City Light, Tacoma Power, and Portland are all well underway in doing these types of chargers. Portland's doing over 300 a year. They've gone just for doing a handful, a dozen. It's been so successful. We like it because we can save approximately 50% of the installation cost because we're not in the ground, right? We're attaching to the existing source that's already there in many cases. And the way it works is customer walks up, there will be a credit card, debit card reader at the bottom, so they initiate a payment, and the cord retracts down in the right of way, you grab it, walk it over to your vehicle, plug in, when you're done, it rolls back up and retracts it.
Well, that's awesome, because that was one of my questions I was going to ask you is how are you going to prevent people from cutting these cords and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's become more of an issue, unfortunately, as of late. We have seen vandalism and cord cutting, people trying to scrap the copper. So with this unit, and that's the actual unit, it's less likely to be vandalized because that's going to be 12 feet up in the air and it's retracted up out of the right of way when it's not in use.
When it's in use, the right of way, my concern is like if the sidewalk, the pole happens to be full sidewalk than road, what's keeping that out of pedestrians' way?
Yeah, so we would have to mitigate that in some way. We may not choose to charge or put a charger there because of that. We do have the option, it's not as cost effective, but we can put a pad mounted aluminum pole to the area where we would want it to be. So it's eliminate that issue, and that is an option. And so usually I've seen that when we did a sidewalk at Seattle City Light, and they just have an overhead that interconnects to the actual pole that runs from that aluminum pole up. It's just going to be more because it's a pad mount, you're doing some civil work, but we know that that'll be a use case because also a lot of times the parking stalls might be 10 feet away from where the pole is, right? That might not line up as well either. So that's a dually mounted unit. So that would mean 2 parking stalls would be electrified. So we have the ability to do 1 or 2. It just depends on the use case. Next slide. So just giving you a reference of real world examples. So the one on the left is from Kansas City. They pioneered this about 5 years ago, and they were doing it called eye level, and they're actually attaching it directly adjacent to the pole. For the reasons I mentioned, the vandalism, the cords being out of the right of way, it's just a much cleaner solution. We will only focus on the elevated, which is on the right-hand side. So that's the single unit. I should say that for this iteration of this program, it's PSE-owned distribution poles and streetlights. So when Carrie talks to you here in a minute about where the infrastructure is and how we've evaluated, that was the criteria in terms of potential areas to install.
So you gotta pay for parking and energy?
Only in certain, if the city has parking costs, yes, that would be required.
Any help?
So I know that one probably, well, I know one that may have it is Redmond. We talked to them about that. And so we probably will intentionally stay out of those areas because it's for that reason, but it wouldn't be exclusive.
Roll quarters and a debit card.
Yeah, so the only thing we require is just that parking stall is truly electrified, so it is for electric vehicles only. Okay, I carry you up. Next slide. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Carrie McNeil, and I'm the program manager for public charging at Puget Sound Energy. And this is a map of the streetlights and poles that are PSC owned that are in Yelm. And we have the color coding here. The shaded red is the highly vulnerable populations, which we talked about earlier. And then we also have the black dots are the poles. And then you can kind of see the circles are the streetlights. The PSC poles with streetlights on them that are owned by PSC. So I believe Yelm did give us the parking information and we appreciate that. So what we'll do is we'll take the parking information that you've provided, look at these poles. You know, if we do partner with you and move forward, we would use this as well as the parking information to kind of have like the first idea of potential locations. Any questions on this?
It's like a microchip.
Right. Next slide. So just to talk a little bit about where we are in the process. So as I mentioned, last year, Yelm responded to our interest form. And then so far this year, we've had 3 meetings. The first 2 were just kind of preliminary. So we actually presented almost the exact same deck that we're presenting now, just to give an overview of the program. We then had a detailed codes discussion to just make sure that PSE and the city were interpreting parking codes the same way, just to make sure there weren't any red flags or just anything that would be complicated for permitting. And then we had a community outreach planning meeting. So this is when we kind of want to start talking about ways to include the community, talk about ways, what are some channels that the city already has to talk to its residents about where they want to see things, what's going on with the city, what are some ways that we can communicate with you all to get an idea of where people actually want to see charging. And then the next couple steps, we are very early in this program, so Yelm is actually kind of one of our front runners, we say. You guys are moving really fast through this process. Yes. So the next couple steps are just ones that we have in mind. So basically what we envision is we would spend the summer and the fall gathering that community input, doing that community engagement, and then work with the city on location selection. So taking a note of where did we hear from the residents that they want to see chargers? Where do they not want to see chargers? So which poles do we think we actually want to use? Working with you to make sure that those poles actually make sense. So is there any road work that would make it really complicated to construct there? Any other reasons why we would or would not want certain areas? For construction and connection, PSE would pay for everything. We're working on PSE owned poles. We would just want the city's support in approving any permitting or just any construction logistics that would be helpful to partner on. Yes.
It's actually for the administrative side. Reference for the community input. Right now, we're also doing our comprehensive plan. And we, on that, kind of encourage people to utilize that as well. And we can then give that information to PSE. Because I mean, it's already right there. You have the capability of marking on a dot what you want.
Yeah, we can talk to the, what engineering group is it? Halcyon Levine. We can chat with them and see if we can add it. No guarantees or anything, but
I was just thinking that when they start doing their community outreach, we already have something that people are able to communicate with, and they can just get the data from there.
And if PSC thinks that's helpful for them too, I'm sure.
Yeah, the more information, the better. So really appreciate the idea.
We heard there's a senior barbecue.
What's that?
Senior barbecue event I want to go to.
Yeah, that's in July, and it's just down the street.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, so just to get an idea of just kind of what we see going on, just for a timeline idea, even if all of this moves really quickly, we likely wouldn't look at installing anything until probably Q1 of next year at the earliest. So we want to take the community engagement portion really seriously, make sure we're getting a lot of input, and then we'd be working with our full services team to actually install it. Then for launch and utilization, so once the new chargers are constructed, we would want to also partner with you on ways to market it. So let EV drivers in the area, EV drivers that pass through, to know where the chargers are and be able to talk about them. Any questions on this one? Yeah.
You know, but, so how's it work to pay for the system? So is it like an app or is it a swipe my debit card or is this free plug in and go? How's that?
Or debit or credit. Right?
Yeah, so you can sign up with an app, but it's a state requirement for this year and moving forward for all public charging stations. We have to accept credit and debit cards. So it won't be the swipe, it'll be a tap.
Okay,
Yeah, tap.
I was gonna make a joke about that one.
So that is a statewide requirement. So, people just already have to be apps. We don't want to put up more barriers for folks and nuisance. So yeah, credit cards and debit cards. It's 28 cents a kilowatt hour to charge on a level 2 charger, which is these are.
And how many, what's the average you think people are going to sit and stay on those chargers?
It varies, right? Because if somebody's to say they're passing through Yelm and they just need enough to get home. So these will give you on average 25 to 30 miles of range in an hour. So if they just need a 30-mile range, just enough to get them home to plug in at home to charge for cheaper, they'll do that. But if somebody truly is dependent on public charging, so like if we do put this next to like a multi-family property as an example, it could be longer. And so there is no restrictions or constraints around the time that you're at the charger, but what we do have is an idle fee. So ensuring that once the charging is done, that they're not just sitting in the parking stall, which is preventing someone else from charging their vehicle.
So the rate goes up.
It goes 30, so after the first 10 minutes, 35 cents a minute.
And
that's the tariff rate.
The rate's the same at every location?
For every PSD location, yes. But other network providers, like if you go to Electrify America, it's going to be different. If you go to EVgo, they'll be different.
But did you say it takes an hour to charge the car?
An hour to get 25 to 30 miles of range.
So 10 minutes doesn't get you charged.
So if
Miles. Wait a minute, so, but you're not gonna idle charge them? If it takes a whole hour, you're gonna idle charge them too?
Nope.
You're not.
only once the vehicle stops at
Finished.
100%. The other thing I would say, so to your question, we do have ground mount version DC fast chargers is what we call, and you can get 80 miles or up to 80% range in the new vehicles. That's 160 miles in less than an hour. And so those are still available, but it's not something we can attach to a pole because they're pretty significant and substantial.
Okay, thanks.
In reference to the chargers, I know that this is the beginning stage, and I did some research in reference to them. Cars don't communicate very well because there's been no standards yet. But will yours, is there capability of when one goes up, without having to replace the whole thing, that it can be updated to where when they start getting it to where the car says, hey, I need a fast charge to get up to a certain point, they can actually start pushing it to what its max could be, or hey, a slow trickle charge is all I need because of what's happening.
So with the level 2 chargers, we're not actually communicating with the vehicle.
Oh, okay.
The DC fast chargers are the ones that you mentioned. And so, yeah,
Okay.
those. So typically what we do, we know that these units have a 5-year calendar life, useful life, and then the reliability really goes down.
Okay.
So what we do, we'll swap out at the 5-year mark, whether it's still working or not, just to have high uptime and reliability. I would say one of the pillars for our program, which we're proud of, is we target a 97% uptime. And we have service level agreements in place for both proactive and reactive maintenance to ensure that. So what that equates to is less than 10 days a year where the unit. But yeah, we're not communicating with the vehicle at level 2.
All right.
So it's less of an issue. But yeah, that's been an issue in the past, not so much recently, but there was a few manufacturers that, there's the finger pointing, hey, no, it's the vehicle, no, it's the charger.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
And follow up with that, because you brought it up when we were talking earlier about trying to get the houses to be smart houses too, will the chargers become smart as well, that if there's all of a sudden a big pull on the grid because we have a heat wave come through and businesses, houses are doing a bigger draw to help keep cool, it's going to notify somebody that, hey, these chargers are not charging due to the fact that we have a pull on the grid.
Yeah, so we don't, Yes, that's next phase. Right now, we don't want to, because transportation is essential, we don't want to prevent somebody from charging their vehicle.
Okay.
We only want to give the carrot approach that if you can, you have no flexibility, please allow us to turn off charging at specific times. The next iteration of it, so this is going to be system-wide in terms of when we send this signal, or we let them know a day in advance that it's going to be during this time period, we're going to turn it off.
I was talking about for your pole chargers,
Oh,
for the
no.
pole chargers.
So for pole chargers, because it is public, and if people are truly reliant and dependent on public charging, they have to have it. So
Okay,
we focus on use cases that have dedicated parking, single family residential, maybe condominiums that have deeded parking. The next one, and we're evaluating if we're gonna do it or not, would be fleet, because again, it's dedicated parking. Anything that's shared or public, we will
okay, so
make
there's,
sure that they can always get a charge of the cars there.
okay.
Yeah, I got a friend that actually must be watching this at the moment, because they want to find out how they can get included in the community input part, and this is Matt McClellan. He says, my car takes 15 minutes to charge to 80% by DC charging, and he says Yelm is the last stop to charge on the way to Mount Rainier 2, so there's definitely a need for at least tourists. So how does one get involved in the community input?
Perfect. So next slide.
Oh, cool.
Thank you.
Like, who's texting me during a meeting?
I love this. So just exactly what you just mentioned. How can we get involved with community decisions? So a big thing that PSE prioritizes in our public charging decisions is just making sure that we're not putting chargers where people don't want them and won't use them, because that's not helpful. So what we have in mind that we discussed with folks at the city earlier, I guess in April, was one is a survey with a map that we're developing. So similar to maybe it sounds like something you're doing with the comprehensive plan is presenting a map to customers where they can drop a pin where they want to see a charger, and then other folks can also drop pins so we can see basically on a heat map where most people want to see charging and then base our siting decisions off of that. There will of course be other elements to that decision, like what we mentioned about maybe there's a pole that's a little bit too far away from the curb, maybe we don't want to do that. So we'll take a lot of things into consideration, but that virtual map is going to be really helpful. So we talked with the city about being able to send that out to residents and also getting local businesses involved, because we understand that businesses really prioritize parking and have a lot to gain from folks coming into the city to charge. Other tactics that we discussed, as Paul mentioned, is attending in-person events. It sounds like Yelm has a lot of really awesome events this summer that PSE would be happy to send representatives to also be able to co-present, talk about this program, just get people talking. It sounds like you all have really good questions, so I can only imagine other people do as well. Any other questions? I think this is our last slide.
Do you guys have any sort of, for demonstration purposes, any sort of portable units that you guys take out and set up for?
We brought one.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
No, we don't have that right now.
No, what were you thinking? Because we could arrange.
Like, for example, we have our event coming up here in the park.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I was envisioning, I guess, is something maybe on a trailer that, this on a trailer where you can pull up and people who drive the electric cars have the opportunity to.
Yeah, it's actually really good.
Kind of go through the process,
Yeah.
and kind of see what it actually entails.
Nothing that comes like it's readily available, but it is a good idea. And I'll be speaking to the OEM on this of how they've done other events and deployments, because that would be really cool. I mean, it's like, just like anything else, you want to touch and feel, really see how it works. Yeah.
You mentioned other cities that were in the running. Who were the other cities? Or can you share that?
I'll share the other ones that are in the lead with you guys. So other folks that are kind of at this stage with community engagement, we're working with Yelm and Issaquah. So exciting to have a lot of different representation across different areas in our service area. But this is the first public meeting that we're attending to talk to.
Yelm's a much better community than those.
I can't play favorites, but this is a milestone that only you all have hit. So congratulations.
My family's been in Cleveland since 1880. Don't go there.
Okay. Well, and I'll say, I mean, we do really want to work with as many cities as possible, so this is by no means a competition. Maybe for timing, maybe who installs the first one, but, us working with one city doesn't affect our ability to work with a different city.
Exclusive here.
Yeah. Exclusive, I understand. But again, just really appreciate the enthusiasm. The team has been really wonderful to work with, so I really appreciate all of this.
The only question I have is, can we get a copy of the slide presentations for us to, so I can share with, community members that might be in conversation with?
They're uploaded in Laserfish now.
Okay.
If you access the packet in Laserfish, it's already there.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let me send you a PDF version. It might be easier to present. Yeah, since we have that slide that has all the different boxes. So I'll send a PDF version tonight, just so everybody has it, if that's okay to upload to the same place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you all for your time.
It's no longer. That's what study sessions are for.
We can go way down the rabbit.
All right, now do it again from the top.
Good practice. No.
Stephanie, you going to talk to us about getting rid of some gambling taxes?
Not talking about getting rid of them. Uh-oh.
Well, if we had a poll, we could charge the laptop.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I can take it off if you want, Stephanie, while you're getting your computer fired up.
No, she's,
We got it right.
Kathy's got it.
Oh, look at that.
So I wanted to talk to all of you about our gambling taxes. Next slide. So RCW 946-110 authorizes cities and counties to tax gambling activities. And they set out the maximum rates that we can charge commercial operators and or charitable or nonprofit organizations. I do want to stress that the state of Washington does not collect gambling taxes. It is at the local level that those are collected. Next slide, please. Okay. So in our municipal code, I want to talk specifically about punch boards and pull tabs. In the municipal code right now, in the amount of, we tax on the amount of gross receipts from the operation of punch boards and pull tabs. We do 3% on gross receipts. Now, if you drop down to RCW 946-110, we can charge up to 5% of gross receipts or up to 10% of net receipts. So we are below, obviously we're doing 3% instead of the 5%. Councilman Palmer did receive a request for us to consider changing our code so that instead of collecting gambling tax on 3% of gross receipts, that we would collect the 10% of net receipts.
And I don't know about the percentage, but they did ask that we move it to net just so we're not taxing, on the gross side, because sometimes they lose money out of their own pocket when we do that.
Yeah, so if we go to the next slide, and so we have 3 operators in town that we're aware of. We did look at other surrounding cities. It's like, some are doing it on the gross, some are doing it on the net. For us, the average annual revenue is around 20,000. So I put this example together and I just use these numbers because I don't know what they actually make on a punch board or pull tab game. But so in that example, the first row where it says gross receipts, I'm just saying that on a game, it's $500 gross receipts. And then the second row prizes, I just kind of started at 500 and then went down a little bit. This is just an example. To get net receipts of these 4 examples, the first one, if you had receipts of 500 and paid out prizes of 500, you have 0 net receipts, right? So, and so on. So down in the bottom section, I can't stand it. I just have to get up and talk.
So here's where we are currently, right? 3% of gross receipts. So if we do 3% of 500, that's $15, right? That's what we're currently doing. That's what this operator in these 4 scenarios would pay, is $15 of gambling taxes. If we did 10% of net, 10% multiplied by 0 is 0, right? And so on. 10% of 100 is $10, 10% of 150 is 15. So then I just showed the difference, and it just, it just depends on how much they bring in on the game and how much they pay on in prices. It's been a long time since I've played any of these games, and so I think the prizes vary. But it's really, it's our choice. We can put it in the municipal code either way. We can do it on the gross, which is what we're doing right now, or we can change it to do 10% of the net. And then it's just going to depend by each game how much they pay in taxes. They might pay 0 in taxes. They might be in the hole. They might pay $5. It just depends on the game.
Stephanie, I just want you to know, just by you using your hand up there and explaining it, actually brought my brain to understand. Because I looked at that, I'm like, I don't understand what this is. So thank you for doing
I
it.
think spreadsheets. Anyway.
So Stephanie, you're saying we don't even need to charge this if we don't want to. There's nothing making us do this.
So we've elected in our code to charge gambling taxes. Yes,
We could do away with that if we wanted
we
to.
can do away with it. I would stress that there are several different taxes that the city collects. And so if you're going to look at one, you're probably going to have people coming and asking you to look at others.
Where do gambling taxes go? What do they fund?
So they fund the police department. They go into the general fund and they support the police activities.
On to those guys, so we'll keep some money.
It's just like liquor taxes, they support the police department. We have public safety tax that supports the police department. Any questions? Yeah, question.
Makes sense to tax on what they make.
Kind of seeing how these guys feel, I'm just looking for action.
I'd say it makes sense to tax on what they make, not just on what they spend. I mean, that's, and in any aspect of business, not just gambling tax, but anything. Because, you'd be taxing them on a loss, you're taxing them, not only do they have a loss on the game, but then they have even more to pay taxes. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that it's on gross versus net. I think it's up to council. It sounds like both councils kind of in agreement on that it should be on the net, from what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if you're in agreement, right, then we can bring it forward an ordinance.
Yeah.
That would amend the municipal code.
But what do you want for that amount?
So my question is, so 10% is the top, right, for net, is that, and then what's the bottom range?
The RCW just says 10% of net. It doesn't give a range.
Okay.
So I think it's 10% of net.
Maybe Tracy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious, if we're talking about $20,000, it sounds like. And how many businesses do we have that have that are paying?
To my knowledge.
3 businesses. So $20,000, and how many businesses do we have here
So
in Yelm?
They could operate.
No, just how many do we have?
So we have 3.
Businesses, just businesses, not just businesses that do.
I don't have that number, but I would want to say if somebody goes and wants to do a bingo game, or it's not just the punch boards and pull tabs. There's, if somebody has a bingo game, there could be tax on that. If they have a raffle, I'm not saying that 20,000 is just pull tabs and punch boards. I would have to probably contact the state to try and figure out that breakdown. So,
Yeah.
It just seems that with some adjustments, some minor adjustments, that we could find this revenue in a different spot. It's such a minimal amount, and I think it would encourage these businesses to do more of this revenue, which brings more people into our community, which brings more revenue to our coffers. So I think that, to encourage the business owners to continue to do these pull tabs, because, and I'm not a pull tab player, but it sounds like from what I've heard from the ones that I know that are involved in it, there isn't a big profit margin here. They're not making a killing on these things.
That's my understanding too. There's not huge profits in these. There's just, it helps with their bottom line more than anything.
Just curious if there's an option for us to adjust and pick that up elsewhere without it being a major impact. And that's why my question about the businesses, it'd be a minor adjustment on our B&Os.
20,000, I mean, that's still a significant amount for projects. I mean, $20,000, I'm sure we could, there's definitely folks in the police department or different departments that absolutely would need $20,000. And it's up to council on what they want to do, on what you all want to do. If you want to move, I think it makes sense to move to net rather than gross, like I said earlier. What percentage that is, if you're looking at the chart there, the more money you make off, the more profitable it is, the more you pay, but also the less profitable it is, the less you pay. So if there's impacts to a local establishment that right now they're not, like you said, they're not making any money on it, it might be because they're paying too much to it's so razor thin, that profit margin, the gross is obviously taken up. If that was net, they're still making some money. It's just, they're guaranteed, if they're making money, they're guaranteed not to go under, I guess, if they're paying on net versus gross.
Yeah, and the business owners I talked to seem more than happy to pay on net. They just are tired of getting charged out of their own pocket on the loser boards. So
I would suggest tying the rate to the sales tax rate, since I think that'd be more close to make it fair. Like, they're selling a product, so they should be paying sales tax. I pay sales tax on everything I sell. So tying that net rate to the sales tax rate, I think would be the most, trying to make it equitable across the board for.
We're not talking a huge difference though between 10 and 9%.
No, it's 9.8, whatever it is, but I'm just saying, like, is that the same rate as sales taxes?
Oh, I can check with the state on that. I don't know if it has to be 10% or if we have the ability to adjust that rate. That's.
Yeah, if she's saying it could be up to 10%. So like, well, if you just made it a sales tax rate.
I believe it'll probably be up to 10%, but we should probably.
We'll check on the verbiage.
Yeah, it is.
So it sounds like council's in favor of bringing an ordinance forward that would be on the net. And then we can check if we can reduce it down to the current sales tax rate.
yeah, give us the range on that if you could. Bottom one is what the top one, probably the top's 10%, I'm assuming. So there is a range in there, and then we can decide on the exact.
We can do that.
Yeah.
That's the state limit,
That's set in the RCW.
CW, because we can't be, as far as my understanding is, whatever city ordinances we have can't be more strict than the state or
We can't exceed that RCW,
exceed that RCW.
right?
Take more. You
Right.
can't take more, we can take less.
Right.
Take less, but not more. Yeah.
But again, it's just, the state doesn't collect the gambling taxes. It's all at it's all at the local level.
Right.
So then the 20,000 would become a lesser amount, which is
Yes.
a longer time to buy a new police officer.
Well, the 20% or the 20,000, you're just guesstimating. That's just a number that could go up and down. If we change it to net and suddenly the tabs go through the roof,
Or more people add pull tabs.
it's making more sense for them to have it, then that 20,000 number moves around. So that one's nice to have, but not something that I think we should make a full decision upon. I think we've got to look at the smaller, either the gross or the net, right?
Do we know when this would take effect? Would it be immediate upon council approval and signature?
I believe so, but I'd have to check in on that.
So there might be a quick, we'll probably make less this biennium if we did immediately. Just because same business would probably be paying less. But if there's more in the future, that's when it would increase. And I believe that's true too. It's very possible that more business could choose to do this now that it's makes more sense for the bottom line.
When I make more money, I invest more and then everybody gets it.
Yeah.
I support release.
So we'll tee it up here for in the next few meetings. Yeah.
All right, thank you, council.
Thank you. Right. So we're gonna talk about boards, commissions, Mr. Mayor. So we also have copies if you guys want of the list of the boards and commissions and the rules with this.
So at our last, for the last half year or so, we've been talking about different boards, commissions and the relevance of some, and if they are still relevant today. At our council retreat, we did discuss the possible elimination of two of those, including the Yelm Library Advisory Board and the Homelessness Committee. Any council member want to talk about either of those currently? Or anything that was your thoughts on keeping them open or shutting them down, closing them up?
I'm good with our original decision of closing them up.
I would, reiterate, we were pretty unanimous on building the library and the homelessness. So.
Okay.
I understood the library one was not,
Anyway,
Right, yeah, that was
it's
maybe.
not like we're saying, oh, we're not putting a block up. We're just,
No, and if there's a need for it, if council ever wants to decide to bring it back forward, they absolutely can do that. Same with the homelessness committee as well. So with that, there'll be more conversation. We'll tee both of those up because I believe we have to, we do have to take a vote on those, don't we?
Yeah, we'll have to bring it, because they're in the municipal code, so we'll bring a resolution forward to remove those from the municipal code.
So we'll have those up in the next couple meetings.
We didn't have any public backlash on the homelessness issue, right?
Well, this is also the second meeting where we,
Internal.
yeah, well, this is the second meeting where we publicly discuss that. We'll have a third during our actual vote, and the public can absolutely come in and testify one way or the other if they support or don't support it. And we'll be sure to ensure that the public has an option to do that and has the ability to know when.
it's fair with that one impromptu one that Ms. Brooks threw together. So, I mean, heard that one.
Anything else on that?
What I would like to ask that we don't just depend upon the same meeting that we're about to make a vote on. Or the public come forward, can we have a discussion, have it available for discussion for the public to weigh in on? One meeting, and the next meeting, we can,
How many years do you want to have discussions for?
no, I'm just asking.
I would say this has been on the agenda now, the different committees, whether we're going to keep them up or at least review of them. I think we have discussed this a few times now. Having it on the actual vote, I think is appropriate. It will give people time to testify. And of course, if they want to go ahead and send an email to council or myself, we will make sure that we listen to those as well. But there will likely be, this won't be at our next council meeting, will it? So there will be an opportunity for the public to come in next meeting to, before there is an actual vote on it. And if they want to discuss it at that point too, we will more than willing to have that conversation.
me, can I just ask a question about that? So meaning that the public comes in and says, we'd like to have a tree advisory board, or we do not, or the homeless committee? Or-
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? And then,
Well, no, we won't actually like tee it up for them, but during public comment or when we're about to, or when you're all about to vote on it, at that point, they can, come up and discuss it and give their thoughts and opinions on it.
this is a great idea. Thanks for doing this.
Or the opposite, whichever they want to say. Yeah.
There you go.
Positive thinking, that's where we're going.
And then, when are we gonna, get up the, government committee going, general government?
Remember that?
Coming up.
And they did that.
I thought it was part of the whole thing. I'm sorry.
No, that's number F. We got to
I
talk
read all the way to the bottom.
city party first.
All right.
You just group it all together.
Well, Cody.
Celebration time.
Sorry.
Okay. So Lynn's obviously in the room, so I'm just going to kind of touch on what we're doing and kind of things are going on. Police will touch on kind of just the logistics of the police force, kind of this force we'll have out there and everything that's happening. Feel free to stop and ask questions during this, and anyone will provide an answer. So As you know, June 22nd is our centennial celebration, Prairie Days. We're combining those two into one kind of big event. The 21st we'll have a bingo night that's hosted by the Lions Club. So we'll be doing bingo at the community center, which is traditional to what used to happen back in the day. If you were here then, they did bingo. It's not a community center, but the Lions hosted bingo. 22nd will be the parade starting at 9 a.m. The parade is hosted by the Chamber. So the Chamber of Commerce, they have a sign up page right now. You can sign up through the Chamber of Commerce for the parade. We encourage you to do that. Also, I'm slowly walking in here. We'll provide the security for that, the road closures, all the protection, but they're the registration and the entries for the parade. They have roughly about 30 entries. We want more. At our best before COVID, we would get almost up to 100 entries. So we want something like that. So please encourage people to come out to that.
What does that take for us for logistics for like public works?
Yeah, so police, it's all hands on deck for police and public works. So we'll have the entire staff out there manning roadway closures, helping at the park, manning bathrooms, all of that. So it's all hands on deck, but it's one that people like, at least on our end, I believe police the same way. People enjoy going to it because it's a positive interaction with the public. We get good talk, you get time to chat with people that are standing next to you when you're you're blocking a roadway. You have kids coming up and saying hi. Chief drives around and passes out stickers, and it's a great time to interact with the public, and it's a good interaction for all of our staff to also interact with the public.
I was just checking on the chamber responsibilities for that, because you had mentioned they're in charge of registration as well. But to clarify that the chamber is also in charge of the announcing that goes on with the parade.
Yes.
Okay.
So, there will be announcing at the parade, obviously, like we don't have usually it's been Cindy Shorno. The chamber's still working on who exactly will announce. More to come later. You could see some local celebrities there at the announcing of the parade. Fine, more to come. So, do you want to take it from there?
Sure.
I just covered the parade and bingo. That's all I covered before you got here.
Okay.
So you're good to go past
Well,
that.
I'm gonna start at the beginning.
Yep.
Go forward from there. I'm gonna say right here though. That's fine. I'm on your time. We are kicking off Prairie Days by bringing back a well-loved event from the past. The Yelm Lions Club is hosting bingo in the community center from 5 to 8. The games are free, but you can support the Lions Club by purchasing concessions that are going to be selling out of the kitchen. That's Friday night. So moving on to Saturday, the Yelm Chamber is hosting the parade starting at 9 a.m. The parade will celebrate the centennial by honoring the Yelm Historic Commission by showcasing them as the parade grand marshals. The route will start at the corner of Prairie Park and Yelm Avenue, and then ending here on Washington Avenue, and they'll push forward all the way to the end of 3rd, and then you can offload your parade floats at that time. After the parade, everyone can move into the park for events and activities happening from 10 until 3, including, but not limited to, Touch a Truck, Kids Day, a pie baking contest, chalk art contest, games, crafts, and activities from local businesses and organizations, food trucks, a magic show at 1:30, and then award presentations at 2:45 for like the pie baking and the chalk art contests. At 3 p.m., we should see if the chamber wants to announce their parade entry winners at that 2:45 time as well.
Let the president know.
What a great idea. Good job, Cody. At 3 p.m., that event will end and we'll transition to the evening's lineup of festivities, which will include, not limited to, the food trucks at a beer garden, Nisqually stage dedication at 5:30. Hogan Moore will take the stage at 5:45. Olsen Brothers Band will take the stage at 6:30. At 8 o'clock, Adam Craig will take the stage. And then the evening will conclude with a drone show starting at about 9:45 when it gets dark.
That's also when Taylor Swift takes the stage?
Yes. Taylor, if you're listening, call me. And then on Sunday morning, the annual charity mush ball tournament will take over Longmire Park starting at 9 a.m. with teams competing for bragging rights, medals, and a donation to the charity of the winning team's choice. We are still recruiting teams for the mush ball tournament. The more teams we have, the more we can donate to the winning team's charity. So call your friends, especially your athletic ones, let them know.
There's so much going on during these 3 days. I hope you'll come out and enjoy what our amazing team has put together for our community. Do you have any questions?
What's mushball?
Mushball is just like softball, but the balls are bigger.
Your ball?
It's the definition of athletic friends.
You.
You can have a pulse, then you move on the field.
Pretty much all I'm looking for. All I'm looking for.
Not too fast. We just have to move.
Very fast.
So the police department's gonna be staffing the parade like we have every year for road closures. After the parade, we'll have a staffing in the park. Yeah, overtime officers for the park. Nisqually Tribal has provided 4 officers for us as well. We should have 13 total for the events that Lynn listed off in the park and in the evening throughout the evening. So we should have pretty good public safety.
Pretty good.
And more in if we need it.
Perfect.
It'd be like our personal Uber.
But not limited to.
Not limited to.
Actually, I like that.
Nope.
You might want to ask, where will everybody park?
In the new parking lot.
Is it gonna be ready?
Ask where everybody's gonna park.
Everyone got a park.
Should everybody for
Everybody. Great question, Stephanie. Keep an eye out on our social media. We're gonna have a big parking map for the day that will highlight all of the available parking lots. We're working with businesses that are around this district to see if they will open up their parking lots for us for the day. Also working on a shuttle that will swoosh people back and forth throughout the day. Working on logistics on that one too.
On my electronic vehicle.
Yes, please park it.
Just because if I remember correct, from Intercity Transit, if we, have we reached out to them, letting them know that they might increase the bus service coming through Yelm during that time, that we might be able to utilize Yelm High as a parking spot and some other places that people can just jump on the bus, come right down.
They do know that the event is happening.
As I said, I just want to know if they might, at certain times, actually have a bus come instead of every 30 minutes. It might be every 15 minutes, just for a short period of time, and then bump it back.
Give us one of those fancy dial lifts to just shuttle instead of the big old bus that collects everything.
Good. I mean, these are things that if they, and I have a meeting with them tomorrow, so I can also ask about that.
Please have them give me a call.
Will do.
how many people belong on or in a mushball team?
10. And yes, must have, give them a count. You must have 4 men, 4 women. At least 4 men. Would love to see you up there. I'm looking at you guys. I'm starting there and I'm ending right there.
Sorry, I got
Come on, guys, raise your hand.
Every year.
Exactly.
That's it. That's just, if there's another question.
I'm excited. This is wonderful.
Oh, I got a
Thank you for a
question.
great-
Wait. On that, the Prairie Line Trail ribbon cutting, where's that location gonna be, like, cutting at?
It's 9131 Bridge Road.
Yeah,
It's right by the
It's not the trailhead?
it's right by the
Down.
canal entrance where it used to
Okay.
be graffiti, but now it's painted clean.
Oh, did you paint the graffiti?
Yes, we covered it.
You did that today?
That was done before.
That,
So if you put that address in,
okay,
it'll take you to that address. It's kind of a dead end road. And if you just park, you'll just walk across the little gravelly area and we'll be right there.
Oh, okay.
Where does that one?
June 12th, at 11.
Okay.
I'll get a hike it from the
You
trailhead.
can also park at the trailhead and walk the full length.
That's good.
Need shoes. That's on you.
Don't wear those shoes.
So right at the canal.
Yes.
So we could also remove those ecology barriers in that cul-de-sac. And there's a trail that walks right down through there. Plenty of parking over there that's not being utilized for that event.
Those are part of the 507 bypass or loop. Those ecology blocks, yeah, they're not ours to remove for that. They're in place for a different reason.
I understand, but for this, I mean, we have the ability to move them, we produce the event. There's nothing wrong with that cul-de-sac. It's a fully functional cul-de-sac. It would provide some additional parking if you had actually, you know, a significant turnout that wanted to go to that.
I don't foresee a significant turnout.
I'll let them. We did, like you said, people can park at the trail. We've, some of the tribe members, we've offered to shuttle if they want to park at the trail, and we'll shuttle them down with, or side by side, so we can do that too. So there's extra
I'd
parking.
like a shuttle. I want to ride in this Kubota. That's not that far. Oh, no, I know it's not far. I just want to ride in the Kubota.
Will the parking lot be finished?
Yeah, so they're putting in curb, today, you probably saw, they were supposed to pave yesterday, but there's some things that happened, AKA weather. So paving isn't very, paving's not very good during heavy rain time, so they have to wait till the rain, so they're putting in curb right now, and the paving's planning to be next week when it warms up really nice, so it'll all be done and ready to go.
Good. I think you're making a pavement.
Thick enough to park on.
A couple feet. We did, yeah. Mr. Sansel.
640 acre contract. We've been kicking it around back and forth with Kidder Matthews. The RFP review committee looked over it, I believe, 2 weeks ago now, week and a half ago. We have been looking at the scope of services was the big thing, just breaking out where we would prefer them to spend their time. The contract is for $25,000 for the consulting piece. We had them break that down into hours as far as where they're going to spend that time. So we had a little bit some input on that. We kicked that around. We swapped out a little bit more just on the public input side to get a few more hours on that. Scope of services includes obviously council meetings, public input, stakeholder meetings, those types of items. Cody and I did a Zoom kind of just a briefing with them a week and a half ago again as well, just to kind of give them an update on where we're at internally as a city with the contract, and just said that, you know, our big emphasis is making sure we get the appropriate amount of public input and stakeholder input into this process. That was a significant piece that we didn't want to rush the consulting piece, that we're okay with, you know, making the consulting portion longer, as long as what comes out at the end is the right product that everyone is happy with. So we tweaked some language in the service contract that pushes it out to the end of December, up to the end of December. Obviously, we could change that at any time if we choose to or need to. They're good with that. They fully understand that. They've had some communication with the surrounding property owners as well. They have started putting out some conversation piece with different markets and different developers as far as what is the need out there right now for master plan type communities. And so they're doing some legwork already behind the scenes. They're excited. I know the RFP review committee, when we met, I've talked to them before, and Cody and I feel the same way. Is every time you talk to these folks from Kidder Matthews, they really do bring a level of opportunity and excitement on this project. Again, not for just short term, but for long term for the city of Yelm, and we're literally reinventing what Yelm is for generations to come, well beyond our time here. But I'm excited for them to get started. They're excited for them to get started. They're you know, they'll come in and meet everybody once we get the contract. We'll get that going, and you know, they'll come in and listen to you. But this was just an opportunity. I just wanted to be as transparent with the contract and scope of services as possible. I know I sent it out last week to everybody. So unless anybody has any questions on that, it is set to come to council next Tuesday for authorization for the mayor to sign and move forward. So, Brian?
Again, just like I brought up for PSC, we have our wonderful tool on the comprehensive plan that has that map that you can just drop pins and give ideas. Can we make sure that the Kidder Matthew knows about that, maybe encourage people so that then we can get some, that can also be another feedback where they're saying, you know, this is what we would like to see, and give people that visual as well. Because not everybody will talk to them to see if they'll be able to do that. Well, as I said, I mean, we're getting that information at some point. We can provide them that information, but when they're doing their community outreach, that they make sure that there's that included so that people who can't make it to a meeting or can't make it to something, they can still go, hey, let me give my input. That's what I'm.
And we discussed like doing surveys online and stuff like that for folks, like what do you want to see, those types of things. So we have, obviously with Lynn in the communications, we obviously have a excellent source to solicit feedback in various opportunities and.
Including town house.
Town hall.
We'll be able to go in.
Meetings.
As I said, it's just want to make sure that one extra tool is available.
Speaking to that, Cody, when does that wrap up? That comp plan online, what's next? Because that's going so long, and I remember, I roughly remember the time frame. So when is that closing and the data start being aggregated?
So I believe they're doing the data as it comes in, which is nice. So they're going to keep the survey open as long as possible. The hope is through the end of summer. If we can go a little bit longer while they're still bringing the data, that's fine. We want to make sure we get everybody's input. Once that's done, then they'll start the actual they've already started construction of some of the comp plan starts. We're meeting about the transportation element tomorrow. So there are sections already working on that. Don't require that public engagement piece that we have to just do. So to answer your question, by the end of summer, I think is when it's going to close.
Yeah, I just knew it was coming up sometimes. Cool. I'm good. General government.
All right. City Council has decided to go ahead and move forward, bringing back the General Government Committee. It's gonna mainly be a good outlet for the administration, including myself and City Administrator Stansel, as well as our City Clerk, Kathy, to discuss items that are more relevant to the governing and the operation side of City of Yelm. And so with that, we are appointing 3 people. I'm appointing 3 people to this. First is Councilmember Crossman as a permanent member on that. And the other 2 will be Councilmember Kingeiser and Councilmember Richardson. And we will rotate the last 2 out. My thoughts on it were every 2 quarters, but I'd like to hear what council, if they think that's too soon, not too long.
Could we get a description of, like, laid out what the general government does? And I think that would help guide me anyways to input on that time frame.
Sure.
Like we have descriptions for all these other ones, it'd be nice to have that.
Yeah, I don't think we have one actually written up currently for it. We have one previously.
This one, yeah.
Previously, but it's probably gonna look a little bit different than it has in the past. But mainly it's to bounce ideas off of for things that don't necessarily fit in the public works, public services or public safety, any of our other committees, to bounce ideas off that, to kind of give some guidance on what we're doing administratively. And, council is not necessarily part of the day-to-day operations, but it makes sense at times to ask your thoughts on certain things, get your perspective on certain things. If you think there's a way we can do things better, we want to hear it during that. 640 acres would be a good thing that we would be discussing. That would go back to the general council and would have policy implications as well on it.
Like our initiatives would go to that.
Excuse me?
Our initiatives would go to that committee. Like then when we have our council member initiatives.
Not necessarily. No. Like I said, if it fit in that, it would, but most initiatives would likely go to public services or public safety or finance. This one is, again, more of the operational side of things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If I could recommend for the 2 rotating council members, don't rotate them at the same time. Have them kind of be staggered and maybe go a year apiece. That way there's that continuity of the new person comes in, they can talk to the current council member and be able to see all the things that have been going on.
Council like that?
I think it's wise. That way you always have 2 people that are very familiar with the process.
We can absolutely stagger them. Is the year what you want to do, or do you want to do it quarterly or 2 quarters?
Quarterly doesn't seem quite long enough to jump into anything or being able to define your role, or if you're doing it a quarterly, and if you were to meet like on a monthly basis, that would be 3 meetings. And I'm not sure that that's enough to establish great roots to be able to pass the torch along.
Would 6 months be better, or would I prefer the year?
I think because how long is our term? Our terms are
4 years.
4 years, which means that everybody except for Mayor Pro Tem, who is your permanent member on there, everybody will have a chance to rotate through it during their term.
And being that I'm a council member from the previous election that just took place, I'll take the short 6 month. That way you can cycle in new people in, because that would make more sense. I'm not trying to get out of this.
That's why I did that like that.
Just thinking about this, like Hess has a very good suggestion from Councilmember Hess. And so as you have people who are here longer term, that way you can cycle and always have everybody knowing what's going on. And I think it's very wise.
Okay.
So I volunteer myself.
That sounds good.
For the short 6 month, and then you can have the rest for the year, and then I'll get back on the train next round.
And just also something to consider, the Mayor Pro Tem, we do that every 2 years. So that could possibly change, not saying it will, but it could possibly every 2 years. All right, I will go ahead and we'll tee that up here. Can we do that same as the other boards and commission? Do we have to?
It's not part of our municipal code, so I don't know that we need to action on it.
Okay. Then those are the 3 appointments, and we'll do that every year then. We'll rotate. Okay. Any other questions on that?
Clarification, sure. The rotate does not necessarily every year with the 2 rotating. It's if you wanted to, you can have one be January, the other one could be in July. That way you have that 6 month.
Yeah, we will stagger it out, and that makes sense. Councilman Richardson's position being first. Okay. Any other questions on it?
Good to me.
All right. Yeah. All right. For the mayor's report, one to start off, you may have noticed our flags at half staff in city. We're going to keep them down like that, joining the rest of the county, honoring Mayor Rob Gordon from the city of Dakota, who passed away last night or yesterday. I only had a chance to serve with Rob for probably about a year or so. He took over for the previous mayor who had resigned. He didn't want to be mayor, but he would. Dakota's obviously a very small town, and they only have a couple hundred people in there. He stepped up and led the city when no one else did. So he was just a good person, a very hard worker, a very blue collar type of guy. But he was a very big advocate for the South County, and he will be missed. And my condolences go out to his family and the town of Dakota. You'll see that for the rest of the week. We'll keep them there. And then other than that, we got our community conversations next week, Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. over at the community center. Council is invited to attend that. It's going to be a very casual type of affair. Just kind of like our elections are. You ask questions, each department will give an up, not each department, myself, the police and public service will give an update on what's going on in each of our respective areas, and open up questions periodically whenever someone wants to ask something. They just ask it. So it's pretty informal and informative. Other than that, no. Yes, absolutely, Kathy. Does anyone know they will be there for sure? For quorum purposes. Got one. If there is a quorum, if there's 4 or more council members there, we do have to, we're going to be publicly.
I would say it's already a public announcement because
There's an announcement. It's not an official public announcement. It would be considered a special meeting. If you know you're gonna attend, please send me an email. That way we can track. Make sure that.
What did you say it was again?
What is that?
Wednesday at 6 p.m. at
the community center. Yep. Will be some light refreshments.
So with the public building though, you still need
Yeah, we still, regardless if it's public or private building, if there's a meeting of 4 more council members, we have to advertise and publicly.
No more.
We'll be discussing city business, so it will, if there's a quorum there, it definitely needs to be noticed.
So raise the max.
No, let's just publicly announce it, just to cover our bases, if there's a quorum or not, if that's all right. Okay. Anything else for me?
Maybe else have initiative, council members? I have initiative, but.
Yes.
Good.
We entered the month of June. I just want to kind of announce, because before next week's meeting, June 6th is the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Kind of a thing to reflect on. Remember, there was a whole generation that, you know, that's a big deal for a generation there. And also because First Special Forces Group being our unit that we sponsor, I'm trying to find out if I can get the link to it, but there's a wonderful documentary about how the First Special Operations Command, which is the lineage, what they did prior to D-Day, a lot of the work that they did. So that's kind of a big thing coming up. And then also June 14th, please remember that's not only Flag Day, but it's also the Army's birthday. And so just want to bring that up.
It gives me a good reminder. Sometimes council's invited, sometimes they don't. JBLM often sends me stuff as mayor to different activities or events on base. There will be a change of command coming up here in the next few weeks. I don't know if council will receive it. You did? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I was going to say, if you didn't, I could forward it. But I encourage you to attend if you can. Attend at least one change of command. Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen a couple, but they're pretty neat. I've gone to a couple now, probably about 6 or so over my time, but they're really good. And yeah, so I encourage you to attend if you can.
Active duty usually puts on a pretty good show, so.
So, I mean, they range, like, some are a little bit smaller depending on what officer it is and all that, but I've seen, it was really neat. I got to go, and I don't know, I think it's a Globemaster they have over there. They took me up on it, and some people, and it was really cool. You got to see what's going on in there, and they give you little demonstrations of different things that they do on there, what buttons not to touch and stuff, and it's really cool opportunities.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, actually good this time.
I had a question, Councilmember Hess. A while back, you mentioned about trying to get a food stand or something set up somebody. Did that ever happen?
I'm communicating with them. They have yet to put it up, but we are, I'm working with them and still working to see where we can go. I talked to Director Colt. He told me that in reference to codes, the only thing that the big concern is parking to make sure that there's safety. Otherwise, there should not really be any issues code-wise. So, but yeah, the individual and I were communicating, and I think we got a couple of people who are interested as well.
That just came to my mind today. I was doing something. I was like, I don't know what happened to that. All right. Well, let's call it a day.
Not bad.
Thanks, everybody.